Hey guys, Trent at Black Horse Ranch, and we're coming to you again from inside the crawl space. Today we're going to talk about the concrete pours and everything that we had going on with those that we did last week. It's been several days now since we poured last. We got the blankets pulled off and we're going to check things out. We had a lot of drama, about as much drama as you could have when you're pouring concrete. So we'll hit all that stuff on this episode today. Something I want to stress to you guys, if you're going to be doing this kind of thing on your own, is to not underestimate the power of concrete. So when we were pouring our walls, we had a bit of a blowout, some situations. We also used a pump for the first time, and all of those things added up to some scenarios that we wouldn't want to happen again, and we'll hit some of that stuff. But one of the main problems that we had was something that I was a little concerned about when we were setting up the forms. And conventional wisdom says, most of the pressure is at the bottom of your forms. And so that was kind of what I was going by. But I should have known better. I've only done one other pour like this in my life. And it was like the walls were maybe half as high as these walls are. And so I did ask advice. And the funny thing is both the inspector and the pump truck operator, when they came, they said, "Oh, the forms look great. You've really braced them well. It should be a good pour. A lot of people try to take shortcuts, yada, yada, yada." Well, I guess that jinxed me because we had some issues. So we'll go around and we'll look at some of this stuff, and I'll show you specifically where we failed, and hopefully you guys won't have to repeat that same thing. So right here behind me was our main blowout. And I say blowout, but the wall didn't really blow out. We didn't lose any concrete. We just poured a nice hefty wall right here. And you probably can't see it real well, but I had these cleats on the top of the forms to hold the top of the forms together, and also to hold in my anchor bolts. And this one right here was the one that we put on after we started blowing the form. It's way stronger than what I had. If you can see right here, I basically had a ripped down 2x4, and my thinking was I was going to be the only really experienced person pouring, and so I mostly had my kids and a couple of friends helping out with the pour. And an issue that you can have when you're pouring with these cleats on, this particular kind, when you use a wooden cleat, is you can have voids underneath. And so my thinking was, keeping the board small, I would eliminate a lot of that problem with the voids underneath. Well, when I was nailing these in, they were splitting in places, and so I was nailing them in. I had thought to go back maybe and to reattach them, or to put reinforce them with another piece of wood. But again, I went by the conventional wisdom that there's a lot less pressure at the top of your form than there is at the bottom, and I was just hoping that these would hold. Well, that was my mistake. And so when we went back through and nailed these 2x6 cleats over the top, those held fine. And so it's one of those things, if you think it's marginal, it's probably underbuilt with concrete. Concrete has so much force. And now, so going back to the reason why this was our main wall that blew up was because we were having issues with the pump truck. And so the pump truck has a 4-inch pipe, and we had it reduced to a 3-inch. But the concrete truck that delivered the concrete was spitting out shark fins. And I wasn't familiar with that term. I'd never seen this before, but I guess basically when your truck hasn't been cleaned out in a long time, or not often enough, cement builds up on the fins inside the drum that push the concrete around and mix it. And so they were breaking off, and we were getting some huge ones. I mean, we got some that were probably 16 inches, but the ones that kept plugging us up were 3 to 4 inch chunks. And so we plugged up multiple times, which takes a long time. The driver's got to take the hose off, clear the clog, and then we got to start going again. And so from this corner here to about this point, we'd clogged like 3 times. And so the operator suggested, why don't we just go with the 4-inch pipe so there's no restriction or no reducer. And so we went ahead and did that, and that 4-inch pipe just lets the concrete flow so fast. You're basically shooting it into the bottom of your forms, and since the concrete is so heavy, it wants to push out instead of up. You know, like if you were to do that with a water hose, the water would just kind of boil in there and roll over itself. Well, with concrete, that's not the case. The concrete goes in and it doesn't want to come up. And so this is what put extra stress on this wall. And so that first cleat that I showed you over here, that was the first one to go. And once that one popped off, this one behind me that I was just showing you popped off immediately after that, and we stopped pouring. So what ensued after that was basically a frantic rush to go around, and we threw in a couple extra braces on the wall just to keep this wall from going any further. And then the kids were great, by the way, and they got compliments from the concrete truck driver and the pump driver and the other couple of guys that we had helping out here. But they ran around and were helping me cut stuff and get the compressor set up so we could hurry and reinforce these walls. And so we did. We went through and we put these 2x6s on every place we had the anchor bolt cleats, and that fixed it. We didn't have any of those issues after that. But we also switched back after we finished pouring this wall. We switched back to the 3-inch pump and the 3-inch pipe. The first one we used had a reducer right at the beginning of the pipe. The second one was a reduced pipe, so it had a 4-inch opening on the pipe, and then the pipe reduced in about 10 feet of length down to 3-inch, and that one worked a lot better, although we did clog a couple more times. And clogs can be very dangerous with the pump truck. There's a ton of pressure, and you'll see, I'll show you this video clip of when we were pouring. The pump truck driver told me, hey, if the flow stops, your best option is to just let go of the pipe and run away, because if it goes, it can be pretty crazy. And so we were pouring opposite corner from here, and you can see me on the video. I'm asking the pump truck driver, is it clogged? And he says no, and then you'll see what happens. It's comical in hindsight. It could have been dangerous at the time, but check out this video. I think you'll like it. So that all done, that pipe popped out of my hand and then hit me in the back, and I launched forward and ran my head into the pump operator's control box that he had over his shoulders, and I still got a bruise on my forehead where I headbutted him. And I don't know what he thinks. My wife was saying she thought I just took off running to get out of the way and I ran into him. That's kind of funny if you think about it that way, and he might think that too, but you can see in the video that pipe just annihilated me, and luckily nobody got hurt there, too badly anyway, just a bump on the head. But so once we got done with that pour, we basically made it probably 3/4 of the way around with that amount. So that should have been the amount to pour the whole wall. And now, so the other issue we had was I used 3/4 inch plywood, and it bulged, and so that's gonna eat up some of your concrete. But I basically ordered 4 extra yards. It was a 9.5 yard pour. I ordered 4 extra yards, and it was just about right. And we came back and we poured the same day. So we need to take the forms off, and I haven't seen what's under them yet. I know I've got some voids under these 2x6s I've already seen, but I think we're gonna have a cold joint in the front wall, which is probably the best place to have one. And I've been reading up on them a little bit, but cold joints aren't necessarily bad The worst part about them is you can seep water through the cold joints. Structurally, they're not supposed to be that big of a deal. You still have your shear strength and your compressive strength. And our cold pours went through both of our bars of rebar. So, you know, as far as strength goes, we should be okay. But if you are gonna have any settling or anything, those are gonna be the first places to open up. So not ideal by any means, but this foundation is a lot more stout than it needs to be. We went really deep because of the drop floor that I wanted to put in, so we still had a nice crawl space. And then, so we're well below the frost line, but we still have to take the forms off and see what everything looks like there. On the top of the walls, we might have to come back in with like a non-shrink grout and fill in those voids because we don't want gaps underneath our sill plate when we put our sill plate down. That should all be sealed from, you know, intrusion of water and bugs and whatnot. So, yeah, so we poured, we used up a bit much concrete, and that's kind of where things stand. So we're gonna start pulling forms off today, and we're gonna have a look at everything. So we'll get this front one pulled off first. That's the last one we put in, and then we'll go from there and kind of see how things look. So we've got one of the corners off, the cold joint exposed, and it's not as bad as I thought. It's actually pretty good. So I'll show you here what we got, and so show you some of the problem areas that we have discovered. So this is the worst of it right here, and that is by far the worst. So that is where we continued pouring after this wall form broke, and if you look down this wall, you can see that bulge there, and that was where our form blew. It didn't really blow, but it exploded, kind of pushed out, but we didn't lose concrete. We just had to add more. And the good thing is that the outside wall stayed nice and straight. So we haven't done the string on it yet, so there might be a little bit of waviness, but nothing we can't deal with here from this point. So. And then, so this one was almost poured all the way to the top. You can see the cold joint there, and it disappears in places, which is good. And then in the corner, we tried to get it down below where the anchor bolts went when we stopped pouring. And then this is where it came all the way down. And so that could have been a lot worse because the forms hadn't bulged out at this point, and so we could have had an overhanging batch of concrete that pushed out with, you know, stones showing and everything. But I'm pretty happy with that, so we can deal with that. So some of the other problem areas we had were under those 2x6 cleats. It was basically what I was worried about, why I didn't put them in the first place. So this is right at the start of that first cold joint. And so, you know, that's not too good there. Some of them aren't too bad. Here's another one where it looks like we just didn't even try pushing mud underneath it. And then another somewhat bad one on the corner. So that goes in a couple inches there. And then most of them along this back wall are really good. So what I think we're gonna have to do is come back in with some non-shrink grout. That one's got some missing along the form there, but that's not too bad. This one could be better. And this one could be a lot better. So it looks, you know, we kind of just had some lapses in pushing the mud under. Yeah, this wall's pretty bad. Till we get down to the corner, then there's just a spot there, and the front wall's pretty good. So we're gonna keep pulling these forms off and see how things look. But right now I'm pleasantly impressed that we can use this stuff. So the biggest question will be on this wall here. I want to maybe get a saw, since I wanted to do a drop floor, basically the floor gets supported off of your footing down here. And if you can see there, we're hanging almost all the way out to the footing. So I might snap a line here and try to cut a notch. So we'll make a cut in the top and then also make a cut in the side, enough for floor joist to sit in. So we'll see. Hey guys, so this morning we're looking at our saw cut that we did, and we used a break off saw, and I'll show you that here in a little bit. Basically it has 2 blades, and you can cut about 2.5 inches deep on the first pass, and then you break out the section of concrete that's left in the middle. I don't know if you can see these 2 lines here, but it makes 2 lines. You break out the piece that's in the middle, and then you can come back and cut deeper the second time. So you can get up to like a 12-inch deep cut on that. So what we did, and I tell you what, I'm getting old because it beat me up, but we basically took cuts down the wall, 4 cuts vertically like this, and then 2 cuts horizontally, and we have this ledge now. So we've got our 8-inch wall, and then we have this ledge where we can set our dropped floor. So we're 7 1/4 inches down, which is the thickness of our 2x8s for our floor joists. We're gonna add a sill plate here, and we'll have a sill plate here. It'll raise it up. And that's where we'll be for the finished floor, or the subfloor. So then on top of the joist will be the subfloor. Then we'll put a plate that runs underneath the wall, and we'll drop the building down onto the plate. Hopefully not literally drop. But the saw cut turned out okay. It's not perfectly straight, but it's good enough to where we can get a good working surface. And this still allows me to do the drop floor. So it'll be a little bit different. The rest of our drop floor wasn't gonna be right up against the concrete, and we will leave a little bit of a gap here. But you know, so this part, our floor joists are gonna be a little bit longer to get up onto this ledge. And further down here, our little pony wall, our floor joist supports will be come off of the footing. So they'll be out like 2 inches off of the foundation wall. So we'll have to figure that out when we frame it, but it shouldn't be too big of a deal. We'll probably just overlap the rim joist. This one will be closer, and the next one will come in front of it. So, but anyway, that's how the cut turned out. I'm happy enough with it. We've also decided not to use the rigid insulation foam on the inside of the walls. We're gonna have a company come do closed cell spray foam. That just allows us to get in and work with these uneven and bulging walls and everything. It's just a little bit more forgiving. We can get it in behind our pony walls and that kind of thing. So, and it'll also help stick our vapor barrier to the wall. So that's where we're at with this. So next thing we're gonna do is start laying out the sill plate after we get all the forms and stuff off. All right, guys, today this morning, we've got all of our forms pulled off, and so we were able to expose all of the potential cold joints and all that kind of stuff. And last night I went through with a high strength grout and patched in the worst spots. But I've got some that are still exposed here that I wanted to show you. So our worst ones ended up being on the outside. But this right here is one of the cold joints, and it's really well fused actually. So you can see some honeycombing on the outside where the 2 pores met. But the air goes away really fast, and it looks like a pretty good fused joint. So I think we're gonna be okay as far as the cold joints go. Some of the worst looking ones are over here, and we'll go over here and look at those. This is one of our worst spots that is still open, and I have to mix up some more grout to cover. But this is kind of what I was expecting. Since we had very little concrete in the forms when we stopped pouring, the second pour when we came in actually expanded the forms out like I knew it was gonna do based on what we'd already poured earlier in the day. And so we have this overhang, but again, I mean, I can see on the overhang part where it's actually fused to the wall. So I think we're in good shape. I think we have good fusion. We did have a couple of spots like this. So you can see where the cold joint was right here. So this is where we stopped our pour. But then if we come back here just a little ways, we didn't get good vibration on this at all, and we were a little bit gun shy with the vibrator, you know, after having a little trouble with the forms. But you know, this is probably the deepest honeycombing of any place that we had on the whole foundation, and it's just right here in this one spot. So you know, these are kind of typical things that you know you're probably going to run across if you're a homeowner or a do-it-yourselfer and you don't do this all the time. I've done it only a handful of times. Concrete wasn't what I did the most of when I was in construction. So, you know, this is good stuff for those of you that want to try it for yourself at some point or are just interested, but this kind of stuff can happen. So, you know, there's some things you can do. You can tap on the outside of this with the hammer. You know, you can use the vibrator. You can use a dowel and you know, shake up the concrete that way, and that'll get more of the cream to flow to the outside, and you won't have the honeycomb issues. And again, you know, we didn't have anybody experienced with this, so I was manning the truck and the pump, and this was basically left up to the kids and the volunteer labor. And so all in all, I think the kids and the volunteer help did a really good job. So I'm pretty happy with it in general. So we'll grout these spots. There's a little bit on the inside here too, but we're not going to worry about that. This is going to be visible because it's above grade. So we'll slap some grout on here and cover that up. And then we're going to get to work on the sill plates. So that'll be what we start doing today. All right, so we're going to start laying out the sill plate, where that goes. And I've checked the barn. The barn's obviously not going to be square. It was a barn, so it didn't matter. So we just have to decide if I have to do any fudging, which direction we go. And we're definitely not square. So now one thing I see here as I'm looking, so we're going to make the barn even on this edge with this corner. In some places we'll be sitting in, and on some places we might hang over just a touch. But as I look down the side of this, I can see it waves, and this is the wall that we had issues with the form on. Most of the rest of them look pretty straight. And so what I'm seeing is that maybe if I go to the outside here, my sill plate's gonna hang over in the middle a little bit. And so how do you accommodate for that? We can't just follow the outside of the foundation. We've got to have a straight line. So what we have to do is we have to measure in the width of the sill plate, and then we have to snap a chalk line. So we've got a straight line all the way down, and we'll set it to the inside, and the outside will just be where it is. So whether this part of the wall bulges out or whether there's a dip further down, it doesn't matter, because we'll accommodate for that by getting our corners straight and then snapping the line, and then we can set our plate where it goes. And then we'll know where we need to drill all of our anchor bolt holes. We can start measuring off that same inside line, and then off of the end of the board here. So that's what we're going to be working on now, and we'll see how we go. So just looking here where I thought we had a dip, we indeed do. The foundation comes in, and it's probably from all that weight pulling this direction with the concrete. But out here, we're like a 1/4 inch in. This is the worst spot, and right at the top, the wall comes in, so I think that's what makes it worse, but we're almost 3/4 of an inch in right there. But again, that's not that big a deal, so our plate will hang over a little bit right there. but we still have the bulk of the concrete. If we come right back over here, we're right back to within 1/4 of an inch again. So this dip really happens in a short span. And right there, we're actually over. We're wider right there by 1/8 of an inch. So it's just you know, something we're gonna have to deal with on this wall. But now that we have this line, it'll be easy to lay out the bolts and get our sill plate straight. And that'll make sure our wall stays straight when we set the barn down. So we'll keep on.